Ruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem. Shem Ergin Shir Torah. Mr. Supposed to like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir. I'd like to give Yasha Kech to Rabbi Steinmetz and family for sponsoring tonight's shir. I'd like to give Yasha Kech to Rabbi Alti Freilich for sponsoring tonight's shir. I'd like to thank Dr. Joseph Safdie for his support for tonight's shir in honor of Rabbi Paysach Krohn. I'd like to thank Rabbi Shlomi Berger and family for his support for tonight's shir. Lili Nishmas of Aaron Doiv, Ben Raframa Levi Berger, and Lili Nishmas of Yaakov Shlomi, Ben Yisrael Yaakov Bigelaz, and Alei Masholim. I have the great schus of sponsoring a shir. Please call Irgun Shir Atayra at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Tonight we have the cover and privilege to have with us once again Rabbi Paysach Krohn Shlita, noted the Irish and author of the Maggid series, who has just come out with a new book, which is available here tonight, From Sorrow to Celebration, the 3 weeks, Tisha B'Av and Tu B'Av. It's available for $25 on the back table after the shir. It's my cover to call on Rabbi Krohn for tonight's drush.
First and foremost, I'm deeply grateful to my dear friend Rabbi Paysach Krohn Shlita and Rabbi Simcha Deutsch for having invited me once again to come to Irgun Shir Torah. These two chevra have arranged thousands and thousands of shiurim. The schus harabim that they have is incredible, and I just want to encourage everyone. I know every year they have a dinner, so please support Irgun Shir Torah because you're supporting shiurim all around the whole world. I would like all of you to please, I can't see behind me, but I imagine, Voltaire, are you here? Oh, there he is. Please give him a round of applause. As my dear friends Morty and Yossi know, without Voltaire, I couldn't get around any place. He helps me so many ways. It's not shaykh to imagine. He's from the Philippines, and he has a heart of gold. He does everything, including organizing my notes once I put everything down on paper. So, Voltaire, thank you very much. And he's going to be selling the books right afterwards. The book is $25. My autograph is free. Most of all, I want to thank the Rabbeinu Shalom that I'm even able to come here in this condition just a few months after a stroke. To be able to speak to all of you is something that is so special to me. A week after I had the stroke, my wife got me a book. It's called Stronger After Stroke. And it was written by a fellow, Peter Levine. Obviously, he's a Yiddish fellow with a name like Levine. And he's written and studied about stroke and written many, many articles all over the place. He's a research associate in the Kessler Institute for Rehabilitation, where I was for a few weeks. And the one in West Orange, the Yid in the West Orange, are mamash tzaddikim. And they help the people, the frum people that are in Kessler, in West Orange, in such an incredible way. David should bench all of them. But in this book, there's one expression, and I felt that it's such a chizuk, and it's so important for every person that goes through challenges. And every one of us in different times of life goes through challenges. And that sentence in the book is, don't give up and don't give in. And that's the name of this topic. Don't give up and don't give in. Many times we feel so lost because we have a difficult situation. We figure, how in the world are we going to get out of it? And it's so difficult to overcome. But a person has to know, don't give up and don't give in, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Now, we all know that when Rabbi Shimon Schwab or Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says a pshat in the Chumash or in davening, you know, it's emes lamita, it's nikorin divrei emes. So I want to tell you something brilliant that Rabbi Schwab said. Rabbi Schwab says that at the end of Moedim, tonight, Mit Hashem, we're going to daven Ma'ariv, we say, V'hamerachim, Ki lo samu chasadecha. Hamerachim, the Eibishter that has Rachmanis, your chesed never ends. Ki me oilam kivinu loch. So Rav Schwab says, what does the word kivinu loch mean? Most of us touch it, ki me oilam, always, kivinu lach, we hope for you. But listen to what Rav Schwab says. Rav Schwab says that the word kuv vav, kav, really means a cord or a string. And I would call it a rope. And a rope of hope. And that's what Rav Schwab says. Why, right after we say Kimi Olam Kivinu Lach in Moedim, that's when we say Ala Nisim. You know why? Because every Yid that's listening all over the world, every man, woman, and child, we have a rope of hope that's connecting us to Hashem. And if you have a rope of hope, you should never give up. Any Nisim can happen. That's why you only say Ala Nisim after Moedim. After you say Kimi Olam Kivinu Lach, then you can say Ala Nisim. Because in the times of Hanukkah and Purim, when Yidden gave up and they figured, how in the world is anything going to happen? We're lost. Just like we thought October 7th, we're lost. But look what happened. Kimi Olam Kivinu Lach, you got that rope of hope. You can hold up. You don't give up. You don't give in. You know why? Because we Yidden and the Eibishter takes care of us. Now, tonight in Kriyas Shema, I want to tell you a fabulous pshat that I once saw. We say this pasuk, L'shavoscha kivisi Hashem, but we say it 3 different ways. We say L'shavoscha kivisi Hashem L'shavoscha, Hashem L'shavoscha kivisi. Why do we mix up the language? And where else do we do that? If you remember, by Kiddush Levana, we also say Tibul Aleim, it should fall on them. It must have a fakad on the enemies of Klal Yisrael, fear and terror. Bigdozer Echa, because of the strength of your hand. Yidmu ka'aven, they should be still like stone. And right after that we say Ka'aven Yidmu Zroechok Bigdol V'fachel Imosa Aleim Tipa. So why do we mix up these psukim? L'shavoscha kivisi Hashem kivisi Hashem l'shavoscha Hashem l'shavoscha kivisi. So I once saw a fabulous shot, because sometimes when a person is looking for Yeshua or salvation and help, it doesn't come in a very straightforward way. The way you think it might come. It comes in a roundabout way. You would never imagine that it's going to come in such a way, and all of a sudden it comes. I'll give you 2 examples. For example, let's say a guy has to buy a car. He's got a job, so either he has to go get another job, his wife has to get a job, or he has to ask for a raise. So that's a normal way of getting more money, so he should be able to buy a car. But sometimes what happens is the guy has to buy a car, and he figures, where in the world is he going to get the money? And then a guy calls up and says, you lent me money many, many years ago, and I never paid you back. I just want to pay you back right now. And he pays him back, and the guy had forgotten about the loan. He was maybe even moichel already. He forgot about it. But all of a sudden he has this tremendous amount of money, and he's able to get the car. That's kivisi Hashem l'shavoscha. It came in a roundabout way that he wasn't expecting it. Now, for example, with shidduchim, studies show that most shidduchim come from family or friends. They're the ones who reach shidduchim. But sometimes what happens is a parent sends a child, let's say, a bocha to a yeshiva, and the guy has a great chavrusa, and he ends up marrying his chavrusa's sister. Or a girl goes to seminary in Eretz Yisrael, and that was not the seminary she really wanted to get in. She gets into another seminary. And what happens? Her roommate's brother is the one that she marries. That's l'shavoscha kivisi Hashem l'shavoscha kivisi. You didn't think it was going to happen in that way. And that's why if we have that rope of hope, that's kimi olam kivinu lach, a person should never, never, ever give up. Now, the person can never know how the Yeshua could come. But I just want to tell you an amazing thing. A few weeks ago, I got a very devastating text from a dear friend of mine. I know him for many years, and he tells me that Nebuch, in November 2011, 13 years ago, he was diagnosed with a certain illness, but the doctors felt it was dormant, and it didn't have to be treated. And what happened now in November 2024, 13 years later, the illness came back, and now he had to be in the hospital, and he had to be treated. So he wrote me like this. He says, isn't it interesting that the windshield wiper glass in the front of the car is very big, but the rear view mirror is very small? Why is that? And he said he once saw a very interesting hashkafa. When you're going forward, you have to have a big picture of what's going on in the front. If you're looking backwards, you just need a small thing. Don't look back. That's not what's important, not what's behind you, but what's ahead of you. And what is ahead of you is that idea of amunah b'tochen. And I want to tell you a fabulous Ramban. Everybody should write down this Ramban, and you should try to learn it. Kotz Mamash Etz Yisoid. Shemois Yud Gimel Posik Tazayin. And the Ramban writes, almost, if you're allowed to say such a thing, an adorable expression. Ki hakoine mezuzah bezuzah echad. Imagine, the Ramban says, you buy a mezuzah for $1, for $1. Why is he saying that? He wants to tell you what's in the mezuzah, but he's telling you, ki hakoine mezuzah bezuzah echad. Somebody buys a small little mezuzah, but then he looks into it, he puts it on his doorpost, and he is ma'ayin in the words of what's in the Kriya Shema, what's in the mezuzah, and then he realizes that that's what the Eibishter all wants, what wants more than any of us, from all that Hashem wants from us, is that we should believe that we are His people. And then he ends, V'yomru lefonav b'riyosecha anachnu. When we learn Kriya Shema in that little mezuzah that costs one zuz, $1, we can learn so much from that if we just follow the words of Kriya Shema. And he says that's the whole purpose of Yidden getting together, to daven out loud together. V'zeh b'kavonas botek nesiyus u'botek medrashim sheyehei la'odam mokem yiskaptu, that people should get together and everybody should say b'riyosecha anachnu, we are Hashem's creations. And if we daven out loud together and we say that we are Hashem's creations, and we hold on to that rope of hope, we don't have to worry, you don't have to, don't give up and don't give in, because anything can happen. With Hashem, tomorrow you're going to have great news, you'll see. Anything can happen, no matter what the doctors thought it was going to be till now. With Hashem, it's going to be great tomorrow. You call me tomorrow night, you'll see. And you know something, it occurred to me that that's exactly what Rabbi Akiva did. Imagine you were Rabbi Akiva, and you had 24,000 Talmidim that died. So what would most of us say if we were Rabbi Akiva? Okay, Hashem, listen, you don't like my Torah, I'm out of here, and forget it, I'll go do something else. That's not what he did. What did he do? He had that big picture looking forward, and like my friend wrote, you don't say, oh, what was in the back. You say, grow. We have to grow in the future. So Rabbi Akiva, he lost 24,000 Talmidim. He took 5 Talmidei Chachamim. The Gemara tells us in Yevamis, Samach Beis and Beis, and also in Parshas Chayesor and Bereshis Rabbah, Samach Aleph Gimel, and tells us that he taught 5 Talmidei Chachamim, and they taught Torah all over Eretz Yisrael, and they brought back Torah. Now Rabbi Akiva could have said, oh my gosh, oh look what I lost. Forget about it. He's looking in the rearview mirror. That's not what he did. He looked at the big picture. I have a munah b'tochen. I don't have to give in. I don't have to give up. I'm going to build it up again. And that's what every person, no matter what the matzav is, and that's what I try to do myself. In this matzav, you should never know from it. You have to do so much exercise, and it takes so long, and it's repetitive, and it's boring, and it's over and over, and sometimes you get so angry. When are you going to feel that you could walk like a mensch, and you see little babies running up the stairs, and you feel everybody can walk, everybody can move around, it's easy. And it's so hard to live with that. It says that you're not supposed to be jealous, and you're not supposed to get angry, but I'm telling you, in this situation, that's one of my biggest nisyonis, not to get frustrated with the exercise. And Voltaire's a tzaddik, if he knows already what a tzaddik is, even though from the Philippines, he always says Baruch Hashem. And he comes with me to the therapy, and then when we come home, he drives me. He says, Rabbi, we got to do the exercise. And he drives me, with the hands. There was a time I couldn't lift my hand. This is a miracle, believe me, that I could lift my hand this way, or that I could move my fingers. Once I started moving my fingers, I began to realize, my goodness, I have a new pshat in Zekiv Kafufim. Right, Zekiv Kafufim, you usually think it means your back. But, when a person is paralyzed in the left hand and he can't move his fingers, and now all of a sudden he can move it, that's also Zekiv Kafufim. And Semech Neiflim, that's all part of it. You get a new understanding in what the davening is all about. So I want to just say something. Now, I don't know, when I growing up in the 1960s, I was a big John Kennedy fan. I loved the Kennedys. I was enamored not only by what they stood for. He was a president after Eisenhower was 190 years old. So, Kennedy showed, that there's youth. So that, it was so great, and his accent was fabulous. and of course his brother Bobby as well. So I want to say something that Bobby Kennedy once said that I think is so positive, and I loved it. I used to say it over so many times. I can never say it in his accent, and I wouldn't even try with the Boston accent. But he said like this: some men see things as they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not. And that's a great, great expression. I just want to repeat it. Some men see things as they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not. And that's Rabbi Akiva, to Tuma. That's what he did. He said, why not? I lost 24,000 Talmidim. I'm going to build it up and I'll have even more. And that's what he did. And a person should never give up and never give in. Just because a doctor says something, the doctors are only shlichim. They're not the one. They don't paskin. They're able to paskins. So you could say, why not? I once saw a great poster. It's never too late to become what you could have been. It's never too late to become what you could have been. Now, again, I'm not a singer, so I'm not going to sing this song. But one of the greatest songs that was created in our time is a song called Yesh Tikva. You got to hear Benny Friedman sing it. And the chorus, I'll just say it for you, and you'll see that it's so amazing. Yesh Tikva im nashir kolonu yachad. There's hope if we sing together. Yesh amunah chazoka mikol hapachad. There's amunah, and we don't have to be afraid. Lo nipol v'lo nirad. We're not going to fall, and we're not going to tremble. Ki anachnu lo levad. We're not alone. Yesh lanu Hashem echad. We have the Rabbeinu Shalom, and that's kimi olam kivino loch. And that's the main thing that we have to know. That we have that kiva shaloscha kivino. Kivino is that cord, that's that rope of hope. A person should never give up. You're looking for shidduch for your daughter. She's so old already. You're going crazy. She's 21, right? And you're going nuts, right? See, Voltaire, he already knows that sometimes I can't feel the left side of my lips, so he's bringing me the tissue. That's what kind of tzaddik he is. I didn't even ask him. He's like one step. You know, when I washed it, it's already salt on the table. It's unbelievable. I mean, I told him he's going to go back to the Philippines. He'll probably be 20 pounds heavier, and he'll probably become a yid. Now, I just want to tell you something. We're going through very, very difficult times, not only because of Eretz Yisrael and the anti-Semitism that's all over the world, but right now, this is a time, and since Shivasa Tammuz, it's a time of introspection. It's a time that we have to think. And that was the whole purpose of this book. From 3 weeks to Tisha B'Av and Tu B'Av, when it's a time of Shidduchim, to get us to think a little bit. And if that's the case, I want to tell you what I think is one of the most fabulous Malams you'll ever hear in your life. And the Malam is going to give us a way that we should all live, every single one of us that's here tonight and watching all over the world, every man, woman, and child. Listen to this brilliant Malam. In Shemois Chavhei, Pasuk Ches. We all know the Pasuk. Va'asu li migdash v'shachanti b'seicham. Make for me a migdash and I will dwell in them. So of course everybody wants to know what's them. So people say it means both Batei Migdash. That's what the Eibush just said. There'll be 2 Batei Migdash, va'asu li migdash v'shachanti b'seicham. I'll dwell in both of them. But then the Malbim says, but there's 2 extra words in the Pasuk. In that pasuk it says, in the next pasuk, in pasuk Tes, it says, "V'chein tasun," so shall you do it. Why does it have to say "V'chein tasu"? It said "V'asu li migdash." So "V'chein tasu" are 2 extra words. What's the pshat? So he says something brilliant. Shekol echad yivna lo migdash b'chadri levavei. Every person has to build a Beis HaMikdash in the chambers of his heart. Ki yochin es atzma. A person has to prepare himself. Liyos migdash l'Hashem. You have to be a walking, talking Beis HaMikdash. Uma'oin l'shinas uzei. And a dwelling place for his holy resting place. And that's what he says. And that's what the V'chein Tasu is. Every one of us has to become a walking, talking Beis HaMikdash. And tonight I'm going to show you how to do it. And he says like this. He says something so brilliant. Your head, your moyach, is like the Aron Kodesh in the Beis HaMikdash. Why? The Aron Kodesh holds the luchos. The luchos represent Torah, which is the wisest thing that was ever given, the biggest seichel given to the world. And your brain is where all decisions are made. Studies show we make over 1,000 decisions a day. Now, not everyone is so important. You wake up, are you going to get up now, or are you going to put the alarm back on, the snooze alarm? What shirt you're going to wear, what shoe you're going to daven. What are you going to say to this person? What are you going to say to your wife? What are you going to say to your kids? Which business are you going to try to do? So we make thousands of decisions. Where does it all start from? From the moyach. And that's why the Torah is represented in the Oren, because that's the moyach, because we want the Torah to be the one, our guiding light as far as all the decisions that we make. But I want to say something that my wife said I have to be very careful how I talk about that. And that's technology in our phones. Our phones, many, many people, whether here tonight or watching all over the world, have phones that mamash destroy our brains. For example, even if you're looking for something that's kosher on your phone, but you know how many advertisements come, and all of a sudden that advertisement is there, and you're so enticed by it that you're not looking at what you were looking for, but you start looking at that advertisement, and that advertisement is poison. And it's not only poison for you, but it's poison for your kids. And that's why it's so important, the technology. We have to be so careful with our phones, with the WhatsApps and the chats. I know that so many people are on chats, and chats are killing us. Not only the Lashon Hara, but the absolute waste of time. How many hours a day we spend on the phone, and how much narishkeit and how much immorality. And the truth is that today, even if you look at, let's say, in something that's kosher, politics or business, even politics is so much filled with such immorality. Even the president, you can't even talk about the president without immorality, all the headlines that are going on. And in business, how many people are being taken away from their jobs because of terrible things that they did with women, in the business world. So you're looking at business, right? You want to grow business. But Rahman al-Islam, you open up the phone, and then you have to read all that trash and all that immorality. And that's why you have to be so careful, especially with phones. And that's what I think what the Malam is referring to, that your brain is the moyach, your brain is the Oren Kodesh. And just like none of us in our right minds would bring a smartphone into an Oren Kodesh, into a Beis HaMikdash, you have to be so careful, where you take a phone into a shul. We have to realize, we're so used to it, we're so dull to it, it almost doesn't make a difference, to most of us. We take it for granted. And that's the first thing. Now, the second thing that he says, again, which is so brilliant, is not only that your head is the moyach and your head is the Oren Kodesh, but your heart is the lechem aponim. Just like lechem, bread, is the nutrient and the sustenance of the world, without a heart, a person can't exist. So he says your heart is the lechem aponim, your head is the orein, and your stomach is the mizbeach. Just like the mizbeach consumes the korbanos, your stomach consumes food. Now, what does it mean that your heart should be like the lechem aponim? The heart is where all the emotions come from. And so therefore I think that from tonight on, we have to be careful what we watch in technology, even if we watch by accident, and what you read in the newspapers. Even if you're going to say a kosher newspaper, the Wall Street Journal, I would say, is a kosher newspaper. I'll be right. They certainly like Eretz Yisrael, and basically the hashkafas are okay. But I don't have to tell you what you can find in the Wall Street Journal, because the news is news, and everyone wants to sell newspapers. So we're not only reading only the business or the other stuff that happens as well. So I just want to tell you, what does it mean to have a heart like a lechem aponim? I want to show you what does it mean when people have a heart and they're thinking beyond themselves. It's one of my favorite stories about Rav Gifta. Many here are old enough to remember Rav Gifta, who was a fire of Torah, the Rosh Yeshiva of Telz. And I had the chus to speak to him many, many times when he was in Camp Aguda. I interviewed him about what the old Telz was like, in Lita. It was amazing. So many years ago, he was traveling from LaGuardia to Cleveland with his Rebbetzin. They were going back to Telz, and he was in the airport, and he noticed that there was a bacher for the yeshiva, from the Beis Medrash, that was trying to get on the flight, but he didn't have a reservation, and he knew he'd have to go standby. So Rab Gifta was watching to see if the kid got on, and Lamaisa, the kid did get on. He was the last one on the flight. On the flight, as they're traveling to Cleveland, in those days when Rab Gifta was alive, they still gave meals on domestic flights. Today, you don't even get potato chips, nothing, right? Only on international flights they'll give you tissues or whatever. But, certainly they'll give you meals. But no, not on domestic flights. But in those days they did. Now what happened was, as they're flying from Cleveland, from LaGuardia to Cleveland, the stewardess gives this bocher a kosher meal. So he was an Ehrlicher kid. So he says, ma'am, I just want to explain to you, there's no way that this could be my meal. I didn't even have a reservation. I got on the standby. There's no way that this could be my meal. So she said, young man, well, I appreciate your honesty, but I just want to tell you, the rabbi told me to give you his kosher meal. So he said, the rabbi said I should eat his kosher meal. I can't eat the rabbi's kosher meal. So listen to this. He goes over to Rav Gifta. He says, Rosh Shiva, thank you so much, but there's no way that I could eat the Rosh Shiva's kosher meal. So Rav Gifta, those of you who remember him, said in this Litvish Yiddish, Junger man, I want to tell you, ich will and I want to teach you something. He said, I'm going back tonight to Cleveland with my wife. No matter how late we get home, I'm going to get supper tonight. But by the time you get to the dorm, the kitchen's going to be closed, and you're going to go without supper. I just wanted to be sure that you have supper tonight. So that's a lechem aponim. That's a heart. The Rosh Hashiva, you would think he's thinking about a mitzvah or rashba. That's not what he's thinking about. He's thinking about this poor kid who's going to go to sleep without supper because he was a standby. That's one example. I want to give you another example of what does it mean to think out of the box and to have a heart. That's a lechem aponim. We spoke about your head being the aron, your heart being the lechem aponim. Listen to this. There was a Sfarish fellow in Eretz Yisrael. He davened in a shul. Now, he was not a Talmud Chacham of any sort, but I may have told this in Woodlake. I hope you don't mind. Yossi was a great host for me in Woodlake. Unbelievable. But him and Linda. But I just want to tell you that this guy, the Rav, used to come to shul at 6:30 in the morning, and he learned Gemara with 15 people. And this Sfarish fellow, what he did was, he came early, and he gave these 15 people coffee and tea. Every person coffee the way they wanted it, with sugar, without sugar, 99 milk, red milk, or whatever. Coffee with milk, without milk. Everything. He had a whole list. But he had this mishagas. He only gave a half a cup. And people would say, Rabbi Yid, why do you give us a half a cup? You come to shul, you give us coffee and tea. Why don't you give us a full cup? So he said, I have my reasons. But he wouldn't tell anybody. And he said, besides, the kitchen is right outside the Beis Medrash. You want any more coffee or tea? Just call me. I'll get it for you. And sure enough, he did. Anyhow, one day he wasn't feeling well. So he wakes up his son, and he says, Yingala, I can't go to shul today. I'm not feeling well. Could you give coffee and tea to these wonderful people who come to learn a half hour before davening? I'll give you a whole list of everybody, who wants this coffee, what kind of coffee, what kind of tea. He says, Abba, of course. So he gives him the whole list. Sure enough, the kid runs to shul. He goes into the kitchen. He sets up everything. He's got this big tray with 15 cups, and he's about to go into the Beis Medrash. All of a sudden, he sees his father. He says, Abba, what are you doing here? I thought you don't feel well. He said, I forgot to tell you something. He said, what did you forget to tell me? He said, I forgot to tell you, you give only a half a cup to everybody. He said, a half a cup? What do you mean? Don't the people want a full cup? He said, of course they want a full cup. So he said, why do you give me half a cup? He said, I'll tell you, but you can't tell anybody while I'm alive. Afterwards, you can tell people. Listen to what he said. He said, there are 2 people of those 15 who have Parkinson's, and their hands shake terribly. And if I would give everybody a full cup, their hands would shake. It would go all over the Gemara, go over their clothes, and go over the guy sitting next to them. It would be so embarrassing. So like this, let them yell at me. But like this, they're not going to yell at those people. And if I gave everybody a full cup and gave them a half a cup, they would also feel bad that I was isolating dafka them. So that's the lechem aponim, that's a heart. And that's what we have to do. Chazal tell us that one of the reasons that the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed was because of sinas chinam. What we need is avas chinam. Somebody is not as frum as you. Somebody who's not as learned as you. Somebody who's not as wealthy as you. Somebody that doesn't have the kids that you have. Or whatever. You have to love every Yid. That's what the lechem aponim is. And I'll tell you one more great story. And this story, I saw this with my own eyes. In the 5 towns, there's a group of women. There's an organization called Minchas Shlomo. Now, I was at the warehouse where these women come twice a year. Once before Pesach and once before Rosh Hashanah. What they do is they all come, they bring their children's clothes that are not usable anymore. They're perfect, they're a little old, but they're not ripped, and they're not discolored, and they pack them up in boxes, and they send it on a trailer to Eretz Yisrael. So poor people in Eretz Yisrael will be able to have clothes for either for Yontif or for the summer, or for the winter. So I was there at Mincha Shlomo, and I saw in the warehouse how all these women are packing boxes, putting in clothes, and if the clothes look a little frayed or whatever, they're not going to give it. And they send it on a trailer or on a boat to Eretz Yisrael. So listen to this. So on Rehov Shmuel Hanavi, that's where all these women come to get the clothes. But not one name is mentioned on a box, so nobody would be embarrassed. Everybody goes to an office and they're given a number based on what they need. And that number, let's say 36 or 42 or whatever, and then they come and they take that box. So this lady, let's say, had number 42. And she comes home and she opens up the box and she sees beautiful clothes for kids. And she calls her Kinderlach and she says, Kinderlach, look, we're going to have beautiful clothes for Rosh Hashanah and for the rest of the winter. And she was so happy. And as she's taking out the clothes, she notices an amazing thing. There's a dress in there. She wasn't expecting a dress. You know, she thought it's only for kids. And she takes out the dress and she puts in front of her and she sees that it taka could fit. And that night she had to go to the Sheva Brachos. So she calls in her husband. She says, you know, I didn't want to go to the Sheva Brachos. I didn't have a nice dress, but this looks like a nice dress. I think I'm going to try it on tonight. And if it fits, you know, we could go to the Sheva Brachos. I won't be embarrassed. Sure enough, she puts on the dress at night, and the taka fits fine. And as she's about to go out of the house, she feels a pin sticking into her skin. And she couldn't understand. She opens up the dress. She sees that the pin is stuck to an envelope. And the pin inadvertently opened. She takes out the envelope, and in the envelope is a letter. Thank you. And in the envelope there's a letter, and it says like this. If you are reading this letter, you probably need the money that's in this envelope. And in that envelope was $195, the exact amount of rent she had to pay for that month. Now, if I was in the 5 towns and I saw who that lady was, who put that in, I would sit down so I could stand up for her. Because that's what godless is. That's how your heart is, a lechem aponim. You're giving clothes for kids. But who thinks that if the mother is getting clothes for the kids, probably she also needs a dress? Who thinks like that? Or she also needs money. So that's gewaldic. And that's beautiful. And that's how people should act. So that's the moyach. Be careful with your phones. Be careful what you allow into your brain. Because all your decisions and the way you talk and the way you act and everything that you do is going to be dependent on what you thought and what you saw and what you read. And of course, your heart has to be beyond, just like a lechem aponim. That's the nutrients of mankind. That's the nutrients of Klal Yisrael. And that's what you should do. Be careful. And Mizbeach, of course, everybody here obviously eats kosher. But what happens when you go out of town and you're on a plane and you don't see that OU and you figure, the K is okay. But what's a K? Anybody can put any letter. You can put a Z, you can put an F, you can put a U. But, you know, you have to be much more careful when you go out of town and you're in business and you don't have the regular hashgachas that we have in New York. Don't take things for granted and don't cheat on certain things that you wouldn't eat at home or you wouldn't eat in New York. And that's what it means. That's what the Malam is telling us. The moyach, the lechem aponim, and the mizbeach. And if each of us believed in our heart that we are a walking, talking Beis HaMikdash, we would act different, we would talk different. You know, Rabbi David Cohen is a walking, talking Beis HaMikdash. He and I, we remember Rabbi David. So we know. And you know, Yossi, you get your shilas answered by Rabbi David. So you know, that's a person who's a walking, talking Beis HaMikdash. The way he talks, the way he acts, even his jokes, everything is. It's all with a sensitivity, you know, for other people, never to hurt any other people. Now, I want to tell you 2 fabulous stories, and with that we'll end. And these stories can, mamish, change your life. Last year, I wrote this book. It's called From Sorrow to Celebration, 3 weeks Tisha B'Av and Tu B'Av. And, you know, when you're writing about 3 weeks and Shiva Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, you know, it could be a very sad, negative type of book. And all of you know, in all the maggid books that I've ever written, all the speeches that I give, I always try to be positive and to make people feel they can be great and be even greater. So how are you going to do that in a book that's about such a sad period, you know, during the 3 weeks? So somehow the Eibishter put into my head that I should look up which Gedolim passed away from Shiva B'Tammuz till Tisha B'Av throughout the history of Yiddishkeit. And I figured if I could find some yortzeit of prominent people in this 3 week period, the stories about them would be fabulous. So you're not going to believe it. Rabbi Yashiv was nifted 28 days of Tammuz. Rashi was nifted the 29th day of Tammuz. Rav Chaim Oizer was nifted the 5th day above. The Slonim Rebbe was nifted the 7th day above. The Abarbanel the 10th day above. And so therefore in this book I have stories about all these Gedolim on the day of their Yortzeit during the 3-week period from Shivas Tammuz, until Tisha B'Av. But I want to tell you, to me, it's one of the most fabulous stories. I realized that on the 18th day of Av, the 18th day of Tammuz rather, was the Yortzeit of Rabbi Isaac Halevi Herzog. Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Halevi Herzog, who was the second chief Ashkenazic rabbi in Eretz Yisrael. He was a tremendous Talmud Chacham. He gave a shiur in Yerushalmi in Eretz Yisrael, and Rabbi Shlomo Zalman and Rabbi Elyashiv used to go to his shiurim. So he was a brilliant Talmud Chacham. So I once heard such a fabulous story about him, but I want to give you the background to this story. In June of 2013, I was asked to come to South Africa. In South Africa, there's a fabulous Rav. His name is Rabbi Warren Goldstein, and they have what's called Sinai Indaba. I love that word, Indaba. Indaba is a Zulu word, a South African Zulu word, which means conference of important matters. So Rabbi Goldstein called me. He said, listen, we're bringing in famous speakers from all over the world, and we want you to come, and you're going to be there from Motzei Shabbos until Sunday night. We're renting a hotel that's going to hold 4,000 people, and there are many, many conference rooms in that hotel. And throughout, from Motzei Shabbos until Sunday night, there'll be dozens of speeches in all the different conference rooms, and everyone will start on time. And we'd like you to speak twice, and then I want you to do something else. I'll tell you when you get to South Africa. So of course I was very, very happy to be honored to come. There were many great speakers over there, and I must tell you, they have something in South Africa that we must learn here in America. Every single speech starts exactly on time. How do they do that? I'll tell you how they do that. Let's say a guy's up here, he's speaking. So when Morty Melman is sitting, when there's 10 minutes left of the speech, he holds up a sign, 10 minutes left. And when Yossi is speaking, when there's 5 minutes left, they hold up a sign, 5 minutes left. And when the time is over, the floor opens up, the speaker falls in, and that's the end. And like this, every single speech goes on time. So once I got to Rabbi Goldstein calls me up, and he says, listen, I need you to do me a favor. He said, the 4 o'clock speech is going to start on time on Sunday, and then I'm going to give my major speech after that, he says. But, he said, me and Rabbi Beryl Wine, who was one of the speakers, we wrote a book called The Legacy about Lithuanian Gedolim. We'll give you the book. We'd like you to interview us. Would you mind interviewing us from 4 to 4:30? I said, no, of course not. I'll be honored. So, of course, 4 o'clock I was there, and they're both sitting up front, and I'm sitting on the side, and I prepared some questions that I was going to ask. And now it's 4:25. I know I got 5 minutes left. So I turned to Rabbi Wine. I said, Rabbi Wine, I would like to ask you a question that I've been wondering about for 25 years. And he looks up, 25 years? I said, yeah, remember 25 years ago, you were over in Miami, and you needed a mile for the second day's Pesach. And you called me in New York, and you asked me if I would come and spend Yom Tov with your family, and I would do the bris. And I came, and it was fabulous. I loved being with your family. I loved being in your home. But I said, Rabbi Wan, I want to ask you something. Ma'ariv, your shul was packed. In those days, people didn't go to Vietnam for Pesach like they go today. Right? They went to Florida. Everybody went to Florida. Right? Today, they go to all these, what they call exotic places. It's hard to imagine, but okay. Anyway, so I said, I looked at you during Ma'ariv, and I noticed, Rabbi Wan, you're the only man in Miami without a suntan. You're always inside. You're writing. You're making videos. You made cassettes of Jewish history. I've listened to so many of your cassettes. You've written books and articles. The Jewish Destiny Foundation produces more than some companies. How do you do it? You never stop. Don't you ever get tired? Rabbi Wan, you're unbelievable. Tell me how you do it. So he got very serious. He said, I want to tell you what happened when I was 11 years old. He said, when I was 11 years old, it was 1946, and I'm a Ben Yochad. He says, I didn't know that. He said, one day my father tells me, Beryl, we're going to the airport. I said, Abba, why are we going to the airport? He said, because there's a very special Rav that's coming to the airport. He's coming to Chicago, and he's going to speak to all the Rabbanim and many Balabatim, and to all the 200 yeshiva Bachram that are in Skokie and the other yeshivas in Chicago. So I said to my father, who's the man who's coming? He said, Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Halevi Herzog. So, my father told me that he was the second chief rabbi, Ashkenazi chief rabbi in Eretz Yisrael. So I said, Abba, of course I'll go with you. And we came to the airport. There was a whole cavalcade of cars, and everybody followed Rabbi Herzog's car, and they came into this big shul. And Rabbi Herzog gave a shir to all the Rabbanim, and then he addressed the Talmidim. And he said, Talmidim, I want to talk to you personally. I just got back from the Vatican. This was 1946. And he said, I just got back from the Vatican, and I went to visit Pope Pius. And I said to the Pope, I have a list of 10,000 names of Jewish kids that you people have. Some of the kids, we gave them to you. We thought that you could save them for us during the war. Other kids are in your monasteries. I know where these kids are. Give me back those kids. Not one of them wants to be Christian. Not one of them wanted to change their religion. You know that. Give me back those kids. And he said that the Pope Pius said, I can't give you back even one. He said, why not? He said, because we have a rule that if a child has been baptized, we can never give him back to another religion. And every one of these 10,000 was baptized. And he said, Rabbi Wein said, I was 11 years old, and when Rabbi Herzog said that he couldn't get back one of these kids, he started crying so hard, he put his head down on the podium, and everybody was listening to him cry. And Rabbi Wein said, I was never so scared in my life. I never saw anybody cry like that, an adult cry. And when he picked up his face was red like a lion. And he said, boys, I'm talking to all of you. What are you going to do for the future children of Klal Yisrael? Don't ever forget what I told you. I can't do anything for those 10,000. Those 10,000 are lost. But in America, there's going to be thousands and thousands of kids. What are you going to do for those children? And then he sat down. And Rabbi Wein said all the Bachrim were asked to go up to shake his hand. And Rabbi Wein said, I don't know till this day. When he took hold of my hand, he looked me straight in the face. And he said, are you going to remember what I said? What are you going to do for the children of Klal Yisrael? Are you ever going to forget what I said? You have an achrayus to help the children of Klal Yisrael. And he said, I just want you to know, every time I feel tired, every time I want to put my pen down, every time I put my head down, I think of what Rabbi Herzog said to me. What are you going to do for the children of Klal Yisrael? That's why I don't stop. And that's what I want to say to all of us here. Baruch Hashem, hopefully we all have children and grandchildren. We got to spend time with them. And I want to end with this fabulous story. I once told this story in Toronto, and when I said the punchline, a lady screamed and she burst into tears. As you'll see how poignant, how special it was. This punchline, as you're about to hear it, and you'll see I'm going to give you homework of what you should all do for the rest of your lives. Now, what happened was that a couple years ago in Lakewood, they decided they're going to close the yeshivas, the elementary schools, 2 days before Yontif, because it's a very busy time, and the young Rebbeim will be able to go into the kitchen and help the wives, because there's so much to do. So this 5th grade Rebbe comes in to the kitchen, Erev Pesach, or 2 days before Yontif, and he says to his wife, what can I do to help you? She says, you really want to help me? He says, yeah. He says, listen, Baruch Hashem, we have 6 kids. If you could take the kids to out of the house for 4 hours, I'll be able to bake, and I'll be able to cook, and I'll clean, and I'll be able to get things accomplished. And he said, and the guy was thinking, what in the world am I going to do for 4 hours with kids in Lakewood? And then he remembered Newark Airport is an hour away from Lakewood. So he figured he'll go to Newark Airport with the kids. They were never in the airport. An hour there, an hour back. You already killed 2 hours, and he'll figure out what to do there. And then he remembered that in Newark Airport they have what's called an air train. An air train is a very sleek train. It goes very slow. It goes from terminal to terminal to terminal. And these kids, he would go with them, go long-term parking. You don't have to pay, to get on the train. You just go from terminal to terminal. And they go over the Jersey Turnpike, and they see planes taking off and landing. And it will be such a great time. And Taka took them to the airport, and he went on the air train, and they were having a great time together. After 2 hours on the train, a pilot comes on. Pilot, spiffy-looking guy with a tie and a cap and a suit. And these pilots are very nice guys, especially the guys from the South. And he sees a father with 6 kids, and he goes over to the kids. He says, "Where you all flying today?" And they didn't know what to say. So he looks at the father, and the father says, "Actually, sir, we're flying nowhere." He says, "You're flying nowhere? What does that mean?" He says, "You see, we're religious Jews, and we have a very busy holiday that's coming up. And my wife asked me if I could take the kids out so that, she could bake and cook and clean. And we're just spending a great time, having a wonderful time together." He said the pilot got very serious. And he said, "Young man, I want to tell you something. I've been a pilot for 25 years. There's not a major airport in this world that I haven't landed in." He said, 2 years ago, I got a text from my son. He said, "Dad, you're always so busy. You never have time for me. You never came to any of my birthday parties. You didn't even come to my graduation. And last week was the birthday of your first grandson, my son, and you didn't show up. Do me a favor. Take my number out of your contacts." And the pilot said to the young man, he said, and 2 weeks later, my daughter wrote me the same thing. I should take her number out of my contacts because I had no time for them. And listen to what he said. He said, "Young man, I have flown everywhere, but gone nowhere. You told me you're going nowhere, but with your kids, you're going everywhere." And that's what I want to tell you. You know who told over this story? In Lakewood, there was a Manal, Shalom Chaim Kanarik, who has a yeshiva called Torah's Aaron. And he had made a Chumash party for the first graders that were getting their Chumashim. And he invited all the parents and grandparents. And he said, "I'm talking to the grandparents. You think that you came just to stam a little Chumash party, but you should know for your kids, that your grandchildren, that's the most special thing you could do because they know you care about them." And I want to tell all of you something that I do that is so choshev. I don't tell this to everybody, but I know thousands of people are going to hear it. But I know not everybody here is old enough to do it. Morty, you're not old enough yet to do it, but Yossi, you could do it. Yeah. Yes, I'm giving you as a compliment. Every Thursday night, I have what's called a Zaidi conference call. That means that at 10:30, all my grandchildren and children call, and we all talk. They want to hear what story I heard, what psak I heard from Rav David, where I spoke, what I did, what I learned, or whatever, or anything like that. And I'm just telling you, that's how you maintain a shaykhus with your family. Because I'm begging all of you, if you don't validate your children and grandchildren, they're going to get validated in places you don't want them to be validated in. And we know that with the phones and the technology that's available, and with the friends that are never available, you never know where a kid can pick up terrible, terrible things. You, as the parent, as the grandparent, you got to make a shaykhus with them. You have to be there for them everywhere, every time. Call the kids once a week. I have a seder with one of my grandchildren. It's so brilliant. His name is Paysach Krohn. We learn a certain prayer together. It's unbelievable. Not every grandparent can do that, but you could talk to them and keep a shaykhus with them. I'm not going to ask anybody here if you know the names of all your grandchildren and what schools they go to and the names of all your great-grandchildren if you have any. But that's an achrayus. You got to know that. Because if you know that, they'll listen to you. Because they look up to you. You're really special. In your mind, you might not be special, but just remember, you're an Aron Kodesh, you're at Lechem Aponim, and you're a Mizbeach. You're a walking, talking Beis HaMikdash. And one of the people that's a walking, talking Beis HaMikdash is Elazar Bald. We should give him a great Yashar Koyach for everything that he does. I mean, he was a kid. He was in his early 20s when he started organizing shiurim all over the world. I couldn't believe it. The first time that I met him, I had spoken to him on the phone. I thought the guy was, for everything that he accomplished, that he was 65, 70. And I seen him in his 20s. But Baruch Hashem, we have great Yidden that are doing great things. There's so many of you here that I know that are doing great things for Klal Yisrael. I give each of you a bracha. You should fulfill your potential. Think about Klal Yisrael. Remember, you're a walking, talking Beis HaMikdash. Don't give up. Don't give in. Hashem is going to be there. And I hope it's Hashem that I'll be able to dance at all your kids' weddings, without Voltaire. By that time, Voltaire will have a beard and pay us. And then we'll be able to dance together. The Filipino Kazatska. Okay, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening. Okay. Okay, Voltaire will be in the back cell.
The books will be available on the back table near the door. Shem Egan Shir Ter, Mrs. Boston, I'd like to give a big Ashikach to Rabbi Krohn for the inspiring drush. I'd like to give a big Ashikach to our Balti Freilich for sponsoring tonight's shiur. We'd like to give a big Ashikach to our Blazer Steinmetz and family for sponsoring tonight's shiur. We'd like to give a big Ashikach to Dr. Joseph Safdie for support of tonight's shiur in honor of Rabbi Krohn. I'd like to give a big Ashikach to Rabbi Shlomi Berger for support of tonight's shiur in Neshama Yisrael Baron Doivber, Rafael Levi Berger, and Rav Yaakov Shlomo Ben Yisrael Yaakov Bigelaz and Leim HaSholem. To have the grace list of sponsoring a shiur, call Irgun Shir Torah at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. Rabbi said the annual dinner of Irgun Shir Torah is coming up in 4 weeks from tonight, August 18th. It's a great opportunity to show Yaakov Satov to Irgun Shir Torah and to the Abonim and the speakers. We're putting out in the journal, which will be published in honor of the dinner. Call Irgun Shir Torah 718-851-8651. Email ist@yeshivanet.com. Yashikar to everyone for coming. Rochanan ben Akash Emor Tzerish Baruch Lazakes Es Yisrael Figure Hebel Ter Mitzvah. Shanem Adonai Chofes Laman Tzidka Yagdol Ter V'Yadeh. Oy me khofes man sik de yagel ter we yad is gadel vis gade shmei rava. Oh man, du hast de namen van goed zijn de jas van kan ik kar mesiche. Na je gro me kom gaar op beest zo waar gallo van kar mame. We zal spelen de kurz over liggen. We jij dan gaan we zo als we pas dan maar zo meer om allemaal met almeen. Al is zo dat we dan samen met elkaar meer samen gaan komen dan zo bij reis zo die was zo dat we gaan samen was. Geen dan al een beetje maar beginnen we te vragen we gaan weer zo en weer we kan hem en kan hem worden we smaak weer hadden we almeen. Dus maar we smaak gaan zo en elkaar zo almeen. Zo we ja zo alleen elkaar zo almeen.